Have you ever felt that sensation of being watched? That prickle on the back of your neck when you're alone in the woods, telling you that something isn't right? Today, I'm sharing 3 terrifying true stories of people who experienced that feeling and discovered they weren't alone after all. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, you've come to the right place. That's all we do here. Before we begin, please smash that like button. Also, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Now, let's dive into today's stories. In December of 2015, Jessica and her boyfriend Ryan decided to spend a romantic weekend at a remote cabin in the pine forests of northern Michigan. They had found the rental online, a beautiful A-frame cabin situated on 20 private acres, promising complete seclusion and tranquility. The drive up was pleasant, though the last 5 miles were on an unmarked dirt road that wound through increasingly dense forest. When they finally arrived at the cabin around 4 p.m., they were immediately charmed by its rustic appearance and the pristine snow-covered landscape surrounding it. The cabin's owner had left them a key under the mat as promised, along with a note explaining that the nearest neighbor was over 3 miles away, and cell service was spotty at best. This was exactly what Jessica and Ryan wanted, a chance to disconnect from the world and enjoy each other's company. They spent the afternoon unpacking, building a fire in the stone fireplace and preparing dinner. As night fell, the forest around them grew pitch black, with only their cabin lights creating a small island of visibility in the darkness. Around 9 p.m., as they were relaxing on the couch with a bottle of wine, Jessica noticed something strange through the large picture window that faced the forest. About 50 yards from the cabin, just at the edge of where their light reached, she thought she saw a figure standing between 2 pine trees. "Ryan," she whispered, "is that someone out there?" Ryan looked up and squinted into the darkness. "I don't see anything. It's probably just shadows from the trees." "Ryan, I'm serious. There's someone out there," she insisted, pointing toward the window. Ryan got up and walked to the window, peering out into the darkness. This time he saw it too, a human-shaped figure standing about 30 yards from the cabin, perfectly still. "Hello?" Ryan called out, opening the front door slightly. "Can we help you?" There was no response, just the eerie silence of the forest. Ryan closed and locked the door, then checked that all the windows were secure. "It's probably just a local who's curious about visitors," he said, trying to sound calm. "This is pretty remote. Maybe they're not used to seeing the cabin occupied." But Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. As the night progressed, they kept seeing the figure, always standing perfectly still, always watching, and always closer to the cabin than before. By midnight, the figure was standing just at the edge of the porch, barely visible in the dim light coming through the windows. Jessica and Ryan had turned off most of the lights inside, hoping to see better into the darkness, but also to make it harder for whoever was out there to see them. Then came the knocking, 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the front door. Ryan grabbed a kitchen knife and approached the door. "Who's there?" he demanded. No answer, just 3 more knocks, this time on the window beside the door. Jessica was on the phone trying to call 911, but as the cabin owner had warned, there was no cell service. The landline that was supposed to be working was dead when they tried it. The knocking continued, moving around the cabin, first at one window, then another, then back to the door. This went on for hours, with Jessica and Ryan huddled together in the bedroom, the door barricaded with a dresser. Around 3 a.m., everything went silent. No more knocking, no more movement outside. They waited, listening intently, but heard nothing. When dawn finally broke, Ryan cautiously removed the dresser, and they emerged from the bedroom. The cabin appeared undisturbed. Ryan opened the front door and stepped onto the porch to look around. What he saw made his heart stop. Surrounding the entire cabin, in the fresh snow from the night before, was a single set of footprints. They circled the cabin dozens of times, with occasional detours to each window and door. But the most disturbing part, The footprints only went around the cabin. There were none leading toward or away from the forest. Jessica and Ryan packed their things and left immediately, not even bothering to clean up or lock the cabin behind them. When they reported the incident to local police, the officer took their statement with a strange look on his face. "You're not the first to report something like this at that cabin," he told them. "The last owners sold it after experiencing something similar. They claimed someone, or something, would watch them from the forest every night." The cabin was listed for sale again 3 months later. To this day, Jessica and Ryan have no explanation for what happened that night, or who or what was circling their cabin in the darkness. Mike had been working the night shift at Lakeside Hospital for just over 3 months when the strange occurrences began. As a security guard, his job was simple: make hourly rounds through the hospital, check that all restricted areas remained secure, and monitor the security cameras from the main desk. Lakeside was a relatively small hospital, with only 4 floors, but like many hospitals, it had its share of creepy areas: the basement morgue, the abandoned wing on the 4th floor that was awaiting renovation, and the long, dimly lit corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly during the quiet hours of the night. Mike wasn't the superstitious type. At 32, he'd worked security jobs for over a decade and prided himself on staying calm and rational in all situations. But what happened during his shifts at Lakeside tested his skepticism to its limits. It started with small things. Doors he was certain he had locked would be open when he returned for his next round. Items on his desk would be rearranged while he was away, and occasionally he would catch glimpses of movement on the security cameras that would disappear when he looked more closely. Mike initially dismissed these occurrences as the results of fatigue or his imagination. Working from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. was taking a toll on his sleep schedule, and he figured he was just becoming forgetful or seeing things. Then came the night of October 17th, 2019. Mike was making his 2 a.m. round when he heard what sounded like footsteps coming from the abandoned 4th floor. This wing had been closed for renovation for months, and no one was supposed to be up there, especially not at 2 a.m. Following protocol, Mike radioed his location to the night nurse at the main desk and headed up to investigate. The elevator didn't service the abandoned wing, so Mike had to use the emergency stairwell at the far end of the 3rd floor. As he pushed open the heavy door to the 4th floor, Mike was hit by the distinct smell of antiseptic and something else, something musty and unpleasant. The hallway before him was dark, with only the dim emergency lights casting long shadows across the floor. "Hello?" Mike called out, his voice echoing down the empty corridor. "Security? Is anyone there?" No response, but the footsteps had stopped. Mike proceeded cautiously, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The renovation had barely begun before funding was cut, leaving much of the floor in a state of partial demolition. Walls with exposed wiring, ceiling tiles removed, and medical equipment covered in plastic sheets. As Mike moved deeper into the wing, he began to feel uneasy. The temperature seemed to drop with each step, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. About halfway down the main corridor, Mike's flashlight illuminated something that made him stop in his tracks: a set of wet footprints on the floor, leading from one of the patient rooms and disappearing around a corner. Mike followed the footprints, his heart racing. They led to a door at the end of the hall, the door to what had once been the pediatric intensive care unit. It was slightly ajar. Pushing it open slowly, Mike shined his light inside. The room was large, with several curtained areas where beds had once been. All the medical equipment had been removed, leaving only the metal frames of the curtain dividers. "Is anyone in here?" Mike called out again, his voice noticeably shakier than before. That's when he heard it, a soft, almost imperceptible sound coming from behind one of the curtains. It sounded like someone breathing. Mike approached the curtain slowly, his hand reaching for the radio on his belt. Just as he was about to pull the curtain aside, his radio crackled to life. "Mike, are you okay up there?" It was Sarah, the night nurse. "You've been gone for almost 30 minutes. Mike glanced at his watch in confusion. He had only been on the 4th floor for a few minutes, or so he thought. "I'm fine," he replied. "Just checking out some footprints up here. I think someone might be—" Before he could finish his sentence, the curtain in front of him moved. Not as if someone had pulled it, but as if someone had walked through it. Mike felt a cold rush of air, and for a split second, he thought he saw the outline of a person, small, like a child, before it vanished. Mike backed away, his flashlight beam darting around the room. That's when he noticed something on the wall behind, where the curtain had moved. A small handprint, too small to be an adult's, glistening wet against the peeling paint. Without hesitation, Mike turned and ran. He didn't stop until he reached the stairwell, slamming the door behind him and leaning against it, his breath coming in ragged gasps. When he finally made it back to the security desk, Sarah took one look at his pale face and asked what had happened. Mike told her everything, expecting disbelief or ridicule. Instead, Sarah's expression grew serious. "You're not the first security guard to experience something on the fourth floor," she said quietly. "That's why they have trouble keeping people on the night shift." She went on to explain that before the wing was closed for renovation, it had housed the pediatric ward. In 2010, there had been a tragic incident where a young patient had wandered off during the night and somehow fallen down an elevator shaft. The hospital had covered it up, claiming the child had died from complications of their illness, but the staff knew the truth. "Some of the nurses say they can still hear a child crying up there sometimes," Sarah told him, "and maintenance refuses to go up there alone after dark." Mike finished his shift that night, but he never returned to Lakeside Hospital. He quit the next day, citing personal reasons. In the years since, he's tried to rationalize what he experienced. The draft moving the curtain, his imagination creating the handprint, the stress of the night shift affecting his perception of time. But deep down, Mike knows what he saw, and he knows that something was watching him from the shadows of that abandoned floor, something that shouldn't have been there. These three stories remind us that sometimes that feeling of being watched isn't just paranoia. Sometimes there really is something lurking in the darkness, observing us when we think we're alone. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe for more of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format. Until next time, sleep tight. And maybe check those dark corners before you turn out the lights.